It was a horrific double murder 40 years ago that shocked Columbus.
It was a uncalled for crime.
June 1974. Security guard Herman Anderson, working at the Mound Street skating rink Rollerland, and a 21-year-old cab driver were both shot to death within an hour of each other on Columbus's east side.
Even now it's rough, but the sting is going away, but the memory is still there.
Decades later, the pain still fresh for Russell Seward as he rereads the tragic headlines. His first cousin, David Martin, a Virginia Military Academy graduate, was gunned down execution style in an East Side alley, his second day on the job as a yellow cab driver.
There was no joy around no more.
22-year-old Taylor Hancock Jr. was convicted of the two murders in 1974 and sentenced to die in the electric chair. But Hancock escaped the death penalty a few years later when Ohio's corporal punishment was ruled unconstitutional. Hancock, who is now 62, is serving a life sentence in the London Correctional Institution and has repeatedly been turned down for release by the parole board since 1989, citing the crimes to be extreme and senseless. But that all changed last month after a Central Office Board review determined Hancock is now suitable for release, writing, the offender takes responsibility for his offense and has completed relevant programs to abate his risk to reoffend.
How do you show remorse and apologize out of a casket? Doesn't happen. Don't happen.
Highly concerning. I mean, this is as bad as it gets.
Brett Finoker has been a parole board watchdog for more than a decade, helping change prison parole laws.
He needs to serve the life sentence. He has survived. He should have been executed 40 years ago. He's thriving in there. That's where we need to keep him.
An opinion shared by Franklin County Prosecutor Ron O'Brien. We obtained this letter he sent in March to parole board members, requesting Hancock be kept behind bars for life, calling him a danger to the community. But just 5 months later, parole officials determined Hancock was suitable for release.
Well, I have my job, and that's to present my side to the board, and they have their job.
Do I think it's a conspiracy by the board? Absolutely not. I can tell you now, this doesn't happen often.
We requested an interview with the Ohio Parole Board, but Ohio Rehabilitation and Corrections officials told us board members do not do interviews regarding decisions. While Hancock is one step away from being allowed back out onto the streets, his parole must still be approved by the full board. That hearing comes next month right here in Columbus. Prosecutors and others say they will be here to oppose that release.
I believe he should stay in prison for the rest of his life, and given his violent background, I think he is a danger to the community.
Can David be rehabilitated? Can he be renewed? Not from a grave.
Now, if Hancock is paroled, the prosecutor tells us he will be under complete supervision and required to meet with the parole officer on a regular basis. Hancock declined an on-camera interview with Fox 28, but his attorney tells us in a statement, Mr. Hancock is deeply conscious of having taken a life over what amounted to nothing, and his remorse is serious and genuine. He surely has sinned, and he has spent more than 40 years atoning for that sin. He is entirely rehabilitated from a lost youth and has an accomplished and loving family waiting for him. He should be paroled. We'll continue to follow Hancock's case. Steve Levine, Fox 28 News.
And my last memory is my father in his casket.
Jennifer Anderson holds back the tears as she remembers her dad, Herman Anderson, gunned down while working security in 1974 at the Rollerland skating rink in East Columbus. Jennifer was 3. Older sister Debbie, 13. She was living in West Virginia and hadn't seen her dad in a year.
For me, it's just a nightmare because I never had my father ever again, any of us.
22-year-old Taylor Hancock Jr. received the death penalty for killing Anderson and taxi driver David Martin within an hour of each other. But his sentence was reduced to life in prison in the late 70s when capital punishment was ruled unconstitutional. 40 years later, a parole review board has determined Hancock is now suitable for release, saying the offender takes responsibility for his offense and now is one parole vote away from being set free.
To be able to even have the option of parole, that does my father and Mr. Martin an injustice.
I never knew his face until this came up. And it's like my boogeyman is real.
The sisters say they had no idea Hancock was up for parole until they saw our story we aired last week.
And we are grateful to you for that, because we never would have known.
Hancock declined an interview, but in a statement, his attorney says Hancock should be released, writing, he has spent more than 40 years atoning for that sin. He is entirely rehabilitated and is deeply conscious of taking a life.
Never in all these years has he reached out to say, I'm sorry, I'm remorseful, forgive me. And they want us to believe that he's remorseful now. No, I don't buy it.
My son has changed.
Helen Clements begs Ohio's parole board to release her son, Taylor Hancock Jr., locked up for 40 years for killing a Columbus taxi driver and skating rink security guard.
A mother can tell when their son is the difference, and I know that he is no threat to anyone on the street. He's no threat to anyone.
Hancock was sentenced to die for killing cab driver David Martin and roller rink guard Herman Anderson, but escaped death when capital punishment was ruled unconstitutional in the late 70s.
This is all that I have left.
Jennifer Anderson holds the only photo of her dad, Herman, as she opposes releasing her father's killer.
It's like murdering my father all over again. Not once has Taylor Hancock reached out to any of us and said, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it.
Relatives from both victims spoke at the hearing. Jennifer says she would not have been here had we not aired a story last month about Hancock's possible parole.
Thank God for Channel 6, because we wouldn't have known at all.
Board members not buying Hancock's story he was rehabilitated, denying his request for parole. Disappointing news for his family.
All we can do is pray and hope things get better and just wait the 5 years.
Our family's relieved. We know what to expect, maybe 5, 10 years when he comes back up, and we'll fight it every step of the way.